Hey, it's Drybear. As we close in on the end of January, it has been almost 2 months since the launch of Path of Exile 2 Early Access. And usually what I like to do is provide a whole bunch of resources for people that are just starting the game when the game comes out. And then we check back in about a month or two later when we've been playing the game for a long amount of time, many hundreds of hours, and then put in more wisdom to go along with the knowledge to redo that beginner's guide. Now, my goal with this is to try and hit every major aspect of Path of Exile 2, explain it to you simply, and also give you a direction on where you should be going at every stage of the game and what to look forward to. This is a lot to cover, so I'm gonna do my best to try and move quickly between these topics. A lot of these I have covered in separate videos in depth on its own topic in general, but if you're brand new coming to Path of Exile 2, I just wanted to cover everything that you need to know to get started in the game. Path of Exile 2 is an action RPG or an ARPG, and though this genre has been very much obscured and bastardized in a lot of ways over the last 10 years of people just putting the title on general things, it is one of the more original versions of ARPG, which is what you see on screen. It is a loot-based game where you fight against hordes of monsters from a fixed perspective, either isometric or three-quarters view. So a top-down viewpoint where you're controlling your character, fighting lots of monsters and getting stronger, and plays into the power fantasy of PvE. And in making this video, there is no PvP in Path of Exile 2. You can group with up to 6 players total in a party. You can trade with others depending on your league determination, or you can play solo, and lots of people play it different ways depending on their preferences. So getting access to the game right now, as it is a early access state, you have to either get a code from someone or buy the $30 access key either on their website or on your relative platform, whether you're playing on PlayStation, Xbox, or PC. The first choice you'll make is to make a character. Unfortunately, this game is not is very much about the lore of the game, and so these characters have fixed perspectives. They don't have adjustable appearances in any way. You can't change how they look. You can change the gear that they wear, and there are lots of cosmetics you can pick up and ways you can make them appear different, but it is a fixed gender, fixed appearance with a fixed voice and a voice lines based on that, and that will be where you start with that. However, there's a lot more freedom and choice in the customization of your gameplay in this game than most other games on the market today. So your starting class will determine only a minor amount of the character, which is the subclasses or the ascendancies you'll choose from and where you start in the skill tree, but you have access to all the other abilities from all the other classes in the game. Also keep in mind that while this is early access, there are 6 classes available. There will be 12 total over the next year or two as they continue development, so you will have a lot of choices to choose as they continue to add updates to the game. The next thing you need to know about is the choice of league, and this is something that a lot of people, if they're not used to ARPGs or league reset systems, are very confused about when they come into Path of Exile 2. There are multiple leagues and flags you can set for your character depending on the experience you're trying to get while playing the game. So the way this works is when you go to make a character, currently in early access, this will change a little bit as the game releases and there's new leagues to play, but there's standard and hardcore. So you'll be able to choose this between the two. Once you choose this, it'll be kind of locked in for your character, though you will have the option to change it with various means. But what this means is standard is just you can die as much as you want, your character stays the same. You will lose some penalties and punishments later on in the game as you get to endgame, but for the most part you can die as much as you want and everything is going to be hunky-dory. Hardcore, however, is one death, which means it is a permadeath playthrough. However, unlike previous games, instead of losing your character in hardcore, all that happens is that if you die once in hardcore, you will lose your hardcore league status and be relegated to standard, which means you can keep playing your character, you just no longer have a hardcore character because technically that hardcore character died. The next flag that's very important for this is the solo self-found flag. You can turn this on for any character that you play, and if you'd like to, you can go from solo self-found to non-solo self-found, so regular play. You can only do this transfer once later on, but as the name would suggest, solo self-found is a challenge option for you. Solo meaning you can't party with other players, you can't really interact with other players, and self-found meaning that you can't trade with anyone. Like, there's no way for you to get gear other than you earning it yourself. So if you like challenge modes or you like a harder way to play the game and you don't want to interact with trade or you don't want to be carried or boosted in any ways, then the solo self-found is a challenge way for you to play the game on a harder difficulty. And the hardest version of the game, most people would argue, is running hardcore solo self-found, which means you get all of your gear, you do everything solo, and you only have one life to keep your league flag available. But keep in mind that most players will start by playing standard, especially if you're someone who plays after you get off work at the end of the day. Being being able to trade will save you a lot of time and grind, and also allow you to go shopping for gear to update your build or change your build if you'd like. The solo self-found is usually for people that are very intent on getting there on their own and really taking the challenge on head on. Next, let's move on to skills and how you customize your gameplay experience. Again, I'm going to try to be as quick as I can with this without yapping too long, and I kind of focus on people coming into the game for the first time. We talked earlier how your class determines only a few things about your character, but you're able to use whatever you want, and that is true when it comes to skills and gear. But on the side of skills specifically, you will get what's called uncut gems, and there are 3 different kinds of them: uncut skill gem, uncut spirit gem, and uncut support gem. And this will comprise the overall skill system. So if you're looking for, like some people reference builds online and you're told to find a specific skill gem and you're not finding it, you might need one of the other types in order to unlock that. So when we go to uncut skill gem, you'll notice on the left side here, all of these tabs are related to the signature weapons for each of the classes. You notice there are 12 of them, but only 6 of them show any results. That's because these are the classes that have yet to be released, but these are going to be the skills that are signature for that class in general. I'm currently on a warrior, which means that these are going to be the main signature abilities for the mace weapon. However, you'll notice that when you go to these skills without being overwhelmed by the text, it just has a level requirement and a stat requirement. So as long as you meet the requirements of the skill by either equipping the weapon and or meeting the level and the stat requirement, you can use it. So if you wanted to, you could make a ranger that uses a mace, you could make a sorceress that uses a quarterstaff, you could make a mercenary that uses a bow. There's not really anything other than the stats and the levels restricting you from doing that, and that's what makes the game so special, is that you can really kind of break the mold of the game and create your own gameplay experience. And there's so much theory crafting that goes into this game because there's so much freedom to choose. Now, gems come in levels. There are level restrictions for the skill gems and the spirit gems, and the support gems come in what are essentially tiers, either 1, 2, or 3. So if you're looking for a specific one, you'll notice, like if we click on a support gem here, you'll notice that there are level 1 support gems, there are level 2 support gems, and level 3 support gems, all that have unique names and bonuses and benefits that go on the skills themselves. Another key thing to think about when you're doing this as well is that the game has a lot of choice, and to not get you stuck up in the paradox of choice, they try to recommend options for you. So when you first start out playing the game, you'll notice that there's going to be only a few options available for choosing support gems, skill gems, that sort of thing. However, in many cases, this will change based on what you're looking at. So if we're looking at support gems here specifically, you'll see that when I click on different skills, it will show different support gems, and that's because it's recommending supports for you that work well with that skill. But if you wanted to, you could very easily hit this button at the bottom left here, so you see by my cursor, show recommended gems. If you uncheck this option, it will show all the gems that this skill can actually equip right now. And if you wanted to, you could even do all gems and turn on all gems in general, which there are a lot to choose from and different combinations you can make. So when you first start playing, you will get a gem that is probably low level, so you'll get like a level 1 gem. You will be able to choose from the ones that are available for your class, and then you will be able to cut this into a gem if you want. All you have to do is click on the skill, hit engrave. Now I have a level 1 rolling slam that I will have available. In order to equip this, you just go to your skill screen here. The hotkey is G on PC, which will look like this normally. You just have to pick up the skill gem, put it inside, and it will equip, and then you can put it on your bar down at the bottom right here. So you have the option to choose. You can either, if you're on PC, click and drag the icon, or most likely if you're on console, you'll just have to click on the slot here and assign the skill to that based on what's available. And then all you have to do is hit that hotkey, and you'll be able to use the skill that you just unlocked as part of it. However, you'll notice that the skill itself has slots on it, and this is where the support gems go. So you have the skill gems listed here, and if you wanted to level them up, you'll just cut a higher level of this. You'll notice that it increases the level based on the level of the skill gem that you have, but you also have support gems that will socket into that ability. So you see these right here. You'll notice that I can pick these up and move them, and these will go into the gem and apply their support effect to that skill. And you can also add in more sockets to that skill by adding in like these jeweler orb items. You'll notice that some of these have more sockets than others. A big point of confusion for new players is being able to level up permanent skills here. So you'll notice that on weapons, they have their own weapon ability on them. So like this mace grants the ability Mace Strike. If I take this off, you'll notice that Mace Strike becomes Punch, and that's just because I don't have that skill anymore. These are tied to the weapon itself, so making the abilities that come from gear make the gear better, and they will gain more sockets for more support gems listed on there. there. The other thing to note about this as well, which we can zoom in on top of this, is you see at the top of the skill list, there are support gem capacity. This allows you to equip the types of support gems based on what you have on the stat. So you'll notice that the support gems have a red color, they have a blue color, or they have a green color. That means that they're dexterity, intelligence, or strength based, and the amount of those that you can have is related to the amount of the stat that you have. So if you wanted to have all red gems, you would need a lot of strength in order to equip those. The next thing that's worth mentioning is spirit gems in general. This is a special kind of persistent effect for your character. So if someone's telling you, like, hey, you need to get cast on minion death, or you need to get Herald of Ice to make your build better, and you go to your skill gem list and you check all of these, like you go to all gems and you type Herald of Ice and there's nothing here, that's because it's not a skill gem, it's not a support gem, it is a spirit gem, which are all persistent buff effects for your character. So if we open this up, this is going to be all of the auras or unique, like permanent effects that you can activate that all give different effects for them. They have put all of the permanent effects in their own category called Spirit because they use a special resource called Spirit, which you can see in the bottom right corner here. So it's pretty easy to see this with like summons and stuff like that. But you'll notice that like this Spirit gem requires, it says on here, 60 Spirit in order to activate. So you have a limited amount of Spirit. You can add Spirit through quests. You can add Spirit mostly through gear at Endgame, but this limits how many permanent effects, either auras or minions, that you can have in your build based on that. So it's a whole other category and relies on your ability to gain Spirit, which is this bar here next to your mana bar at the very bottom of the screen. So this is the amount of Spirit that you have. So you'll notice that if I use things that use Spirit, it will use up the Spirit and keep that locked in, usually for summons and things like that, or auras, and then that will be part of your, but it's a separate entire system that you can use. You use that as a separate resource. And you will cut these with spirit gems as well, which, yes, the spirit gems drop way less frequently, so you'll either have to buy these or you'll find them infrequently while you're leveling and dropping and things like that. Next, let's talk about what is probably the most intimidating aspect of Path of Exile 2, or Path of Exile 1 for that matter, and something that gets a lot of people very, antsy when they first come into the game to learn it, and that is going to be the passive skill tree, which is this monstrosity that you see here. Realistically, the point of this is to give you a lot of options to customize your character. And I know when you're a new player and you come into this, you're like, oh my god, what choices do I make? What's going on? Some people will tell you, don't even try to make your own build, just copy builds that you see online to play the game. But I'm going to encourage you to follow whatever it is your heart desires. It is super fun to mess around with builds this way and make your own build. I think a lot of people out there that are the vocal minority, or the vocal majority, I should say, they play solo self-found, they make their own builds, and they play after work, and they have a blast for like a season, like 3 months, just making a cool build they just randomly thought of to see how it works. I think there's a lot of people out there that don't yap online, they just enjoy themselves in their own private time. However, keep in mind that, you will start at a certain point of the skill tree, and you'll just make one choice at a time, left or right, and click on these nodes. There's going to be a whole bunch of things that we can get into around nomenclature and other ideas like that, but I think understanding the skill tree is a big part of the experience that you'll run into. The only determination for the skill tree, this is like 99% the same skill tree for everyone. Like all the nodes will be in the same place for every class. They all share mostly the same skill tree in general. And the only difference for the classes is where they start. So this node here in the bottom left, so they start here and they have to go outward before they make their journey across the skill tree. This is going to be Warrior and Marauder. This is Duelist and the Mercenary. This is the Ranger and the Huntress. This is the Monk and the Shadow. This is the Sorceress and the Witch, and this is going to be the Templar and the Druid once all those finally get added to the game. But you'll notice that if you wanted to, you could start as a Templar once those are added, go up and go right over to Sorceress and Witch if you'd like, and have that be part of your experience. You can start as a Ranger and come down here into the Mercenary Duelist side of the tree. You have the freedom to choose in the direction that you want to go and the things that you want to pick up. Now, the reason I say it's 99% the same is sometimes nodes will change. One of the easiest ones to tell is right here for most classes in the game, these nodes here coming out of Witch and Sorceress will give spell damage. However, if you're playing a Witch, it's expected you're going to be using minions in your build, though not all Witch builds do. And these nodes may have spell damage and minion damage, right? And some things based on the stats they give or the bonuses they have may have subtle differences in the stats that fit more to the class you're playing based on the available abilities they have and how they expect you to play the class. So some nodes may be slightly different in cases, but for the most part, 99% 99% of this tree is identical between all classes. Now that being said, let's talk about how the passive skill tree functions and things that you'll want to know about when it comes to the stats that come out of them. There are going to be 3 different types of nodes that you'll want to pay attention to. The first one is going to be your basic minor node. They look like this. They're very small little circles, or I guess there's more than 3, there's like 4 types. But you'll have these little baby nodes that are little tiny ones. These usually give 1 or 2 stats, either a flat stat or a percentage stat that will scale up something for you. So you can get like stun threshold, projectile damage, you can get skill speed, one of the best stats in the game in general. You can get spell damage, cast speed, in very rare cases, movement speed, chaos damage, things like that. But those are your little tiny nodes. The next kind of node is going to be the notable. They're called notables, which is kind of a cute name, but you'll notice that they are a little bit bigger than the other ones, and these can give pretty unique stats in some cases, and usually you will give more than a regular node, or will just have like more overall value than that. So these notables are going to be really big and important for you to secure certain builds, and usually will have more value as you move through, so picking up more of these in general will be useful. The next step up from the notables is going to be the keystone passive. So you'll notice that as you move through the tree and you start moving out to different places, you'll run into these mega big, huge dinner plate sized nodes, and these are called keystones. These cannot be instilled. They are very powerful and usually will give you a unique build defining effect that will change how your build functions. So Giant's Blood allows you to wield 2-handed weapons in each hand. Acrobatics makes it so you can evade everything, even things that aren't physical attacks like elemental nodes. Chaos Inoculation is another big one. This makes you immune to chaos damage, but sets your max life to 1. They do pretty wacky things, and they will make major changes to your abilities and to your playstyle. In general, you will get about 122, 123 skill points to play around with. You'll get 1 point for every level as you level up to max level 100, and then there are like 23 different skill points you can get from doing like main story quests and unlocks on your map. Now, since we're here and talking about it, I probably should mention the weapon set skill points, which is going to be a bit of a confusing point for a lot of players. When you first start out, this thing is mega confusing, and it's an optional feature. You don't have to engage with weapon set points if you don't want to. It is a way for you to hyper optimize a build down to the finest detail, and is more for like your end game build once you really understand the game. But you'll notice here that right now I have 1 skill point available, and this happens to new players all the time just based on the way the UI is set up. But you notice that I also have 12 weapon set skill points. So why can't I spend all of these weapon set skill points? Now, weapon set skill points are not bonus skill points. They are skill points that allow you to set a single skill point 2 different ways depending on your equipment. If you go to your gear list, you can see that you have 2 different weapon sets. So basically what this does, it allows you to set the same single skill point differently based on which weapon set you currently have in your hand. So if you have 1 or 2 between these 2, you can actually swap these if you'd like to get different skill points in your passive tree that will allow you to benefit from that. So the way you do this is, say like, you know, you're at a point where there's 2 different nodes next to you. All you have to do is hit the arrow key from this. You need to have a skill point available. So we have 1 skill point available right now. This will be the skill point that you have, so you can't spend this when you have 0. So I can send this 1 skill point. If I click here, I'm now allocating points for weapon set 1. I can change that to here, and you'll notice this is red. And then I can set this to weapon set 2. So now I'm allocating for weapon set 2. So then I can click on here, and you'll notice this is green. So weapon set 1, when I switch to this weapon, it will use this node. When I use weapon set 2, it will use this node. You'll notice that only 1 skill point was lost though. That 1 skill point that I had to spend is gone, and 1 minus from each weapon set is there. It doesn't gain you more weapons, it doesn't gain you more passive skill tree points, it just allows you to allocate that differently. There are a bunch of different examples on how to maximize this. Some ascendancies like the Witch Hunter can use this differently. One of my favorites right here is this set right here. You can see from this node, if you go up, you get 1-handed weapon damage, and if you go down, you get 2-handed weapon damage. So maybe you have 1 set of skills you use with 1-handed, like a 1-hand and a shield, and you use a skill that you like to use with a 2-hander for more damage. You can set the weapon set skill points on this for 1-hand, weapon set 1, to use 1-hand damage, and for 2-hand, weapon set 2, you can use 2-hand damage. Again, It's an entirely optional system. You don't have to use this if you don't want to, but hopefully that clears it up for people that are confused by it. Now, I know I said this video was going to be short, but I guess that's kind of out the window now. I feel like we're just going to have to try and explain these the best that we can as we're going. There is one more thing that you need to know about the passive skill tree that becomes available later on and actually makes a pretty big difference in the build that you're running. You have the ability to interact with the Instillment system. It is a system that only unlocks in Endgame. We're not going to go through how to unlock it or what it looks like, but just know that there is a way for you to add one additional node from anywhere on the tree that isn't a keystone to your amulets. You can actually get amulets that have an extra skill on them by instilling them, and this can be either a minor node or a notable, which means that you can pick from this, you can make a build, and then you can go across the whole entire tree and pick one node that you have from this to instill on your amulet, which allows you to get some things that might be completely out of reach. Next, let's talk, at least at a high level, about stats and gear and how to set everything up. I'm not going to go through like advanced stats, what stats are good or bad. I just want to explain the overall gearing system and stat system so you're armed with the information you need to be able to play the game and make your own build. The starting point for this is going to be the primary stats, or called attributes, in this game, and you'll see them if you bring up your character sheet in game. You'll see the three here: strength, dexterity, and intelligence. One of the biggest mistakes that new players make coming into the Path of Exile 2 for the first time is that none of these provide damage for you directly. There are some effects that will scale damage or efficacy based on how much of a stat you have, but by default, you're not going to be a strength-based character stacking strength so you can deal more damage unless you have some kind of modifier that does that. By default, strength just gives you +2 life per stat, dexterity gives you +5 accuracy, and intelligence gives you +2 mana. These are going to serve as your primary requirement for using abilities. So we talked earlier about how some of these abilities have stat requirements, and some of the characters themselves are either a primary stat character or a hybrid, which, by the way, is denoted by this skill tree. So both the characters here, the Marauder and the Warrior, are strength-based. Both of the characters here are dexterity-based. Both the characters here are intelligence-based. And then the ones in between share both of their neighbors' stats. So like Templar and Druid share strength from the left and intelligence from the right. So they are a hybrid class of strength and intelligence. Shadow and Monk are part intelligence, part dexterity. Mercenary and Duelist are part strength, part dexterity. So you'll notice that for those skills that align with that class, they will usually require this stat that is their signature stat. So for Warrior, you notice that all of their skills require strength. For Witch and Sorceress, all of their skills require intelligence. So you see here the level and intelligence requirement for that. Quarterstaff is a monk weapon, which means they are hybrid between dexterity and intelligence. And you'll notice that, hey, they have a lower requirement for these, but they do require both dexterity and intelligence. And that's generally how that goes. So no, if you're running like a ranger, you're not going to be stacking dexterity for damage in a global sense, though there will be ways for you to run attribute builds that do this. It's not a function of the core design of the game. Now, when you're leveling, the best thing to do is to make sure you're keeping up with your defenses. The primary defenses in the game right now are armor, evasion, and then energy, shield, and life. So these four here, usually either armor, evasion, or some mixture of them, at least once they balance it out for endgame. And the energy shield is this blue bar next to your health bar, and the red is your health bar there. So those are your survival aspects, and you're gonna have a whole bunch of other ways to modify this, increase regeneration, things like that. Then you're also gonna have resistances to the different elemental types. So there's lightning, fire, and cold for element, and then there's a wild card, which is chaos damage, which really only comes online for endgame, though keep in mind that poison is a chaos damage in this game overall. Now, the gear is also signature for a type of class as well. So just like these being related to the stats of the class that spawned them, so like, you know, these bow ones are primary dexterity because they're sourcing from the signature weapon of a ranger, which is a signature dexterity class. The same thing will go for the gear as well. So a lot of high armor things will be strength based on the requirements. You'll see how this has a level requirement and a strength requirement on it. But you can see, like, I'm on a warrior, and in my offhand I have a wand just because I have enough intelligence to use it. So that will generally be related there based on the requirement you have on the stats for the gear itself. If you don't meet the requirements, you won't be able to equip the gear, and you can add a whole bunch of stats on these as well. Now, I'm not going to sit here and go through all of the stats and the things that drop on that and that whole system there. Just know that there is a range of stats that you can get on different gear pieces that will roll range of values, and there's qualities and all of that, and you'll experience that as you go through the game. However, there's one thing that I really want to highlight for you that helps a lot of new players get into making their own builds or just experiencing Path of Exile, and that is how to see how your stats affect your build. I see a lot of people that say, okay, I have this weapon and this weapon. How do I know which one's better? How do I know which one I'm supposed to be using right now for the build that I'm looking for? And the best way to do that is to use their stat system. So in general, there isn't like, this isn't perfect. It's like 90% of the way there. They're still improving it. They're still making it better, but you will see a readout, a like real-time readout of the values of your abilities if you bring up your skill screen. So you can see that I have Mace Strike, which comes from my mace, and I can bring out the stats here. If you're looking at an ability as well, you can also hold Alt on PC and look at these and read these nomenclatures, things like that. But the best way to see it is just to try out different gear. You can swap out different passives. You can swap out different gears. So if you look at the DPS, this is 406 DPS for Mace Strike. If I swap my weapon, it's now 714. And so you can kind of just do stuff like this, right? You can just change stuff out and just see if there's a way for you to test that. Do A/B testing, try different gear, different stats. We have this here. If I take off a piece of item, you can see how my ring adds DPS and different stats to this. You can add critical strike chance, but all of that, I'm not gonna go through all the stats in the game, but there is a way for you to easily check the stat values and how they impact your gear in real time by changing your equipment and also changing your passive skill tree as well. The next thing I'll leave you with before we move on from gear and stats is that there are a lot of very well-defined sandboxes and boundaries between stats. There's like the nomenclature is actually quite important when you're looking through these stats in general. So when you go to a skill, so if we zoom in on this real quick, we can zoom in super far. We can go to a skill here. If I hover on the skill Dark Effigy, you'll notice that when we go here to this in general, that it has all these different like names and tags and titles. If you see anything that has dot underlined underneath it, it usually means it is a proper noun, it is a named mechanic in the game, and anytime things reference a named mechanic, they usually are talking about that mechanic directly. So you'll notice that this is a spell. So under the name of the ability, it says it is a spell. We can go to the Rolling Slam here, and you'll notice that underneath Rolling Slam, it doesn't say spell, it says attack. So when you see a stat that says, you know, physical damage from attacks is increased, or, you know, leech from physical damage from attacks, or attack skills have faster, whatever, then it's because of this category attack, which means that if you try to apply a spell modifier to this, it's not going to work because this is not a spell. You'll also notice that our secondary tags underneath this, so like totem, AoE, projectile, chaos, duration, and you'll notice that all of this gets represented in the game as well, and they're pretty good about showing these accurately. So you'll notice that this says it is a projectile. So if I go in here and I come down and I say increased projectile damage, well, that's going to apply to anything that has the projectile tag on it. So learn to, read the tooltips, but also reference the tags themselves and trust them, because for the most part, they're pretty accurate to what you think how they would function. If there is an attack speed versus cast speed versus, things like that, it usually relies on these tags to show that. And a lot of times things are very insulated. So for example, if you're talking about like minions versus attacks versus spells versus totems, they all have their own little, boundary limited sandbox that they play in. So getting yourself damage isn't going to give your minions damage because they are separate from you in that way. And so you might need the stat specifically that goes towards that kind of ability. Now, a quick mention on this for the people that are leveling, make sure you're keeping up with your flasks and your charms, which are the piece of gear that we didn't talk about here. The flask is a fixed system. So if you don't have enough of a stat, you will be able to use these hotkeys down here to use either your health flask or your mana flask. These can be, you can find better versions of these that give more health or more mana, or to have other valuable stats on them. My recommendation for this is always to find ones while leveling that say gain charges per second. This will give you the biggest boost, because then said, while you're running around, you're constantly gaining charges. The way this works is you have a certain amount of charges on it that you gain by either killing enemies or, engaging in activities, running across checkpoints and things like that will refill it. And then you can consume charges to use the flask to give yourself either health or mana. And there are other effects that affect this as well. You will also have charm slots that come from your belt. So the implicit stat on the belt is the amount of charm slots you have. These all have different values that give you different things. My recommendation for leveling is just to run a charm that gives you immunity to freeze or immunity to stun, as those usually are the main reason why you die in many cases, because you got hard CC'd, but you can choose which ones work for you. And these are gear that you can equip and add. They have their own charges as well. If you ever run out of flask charges, you can come in town and you can hit the well that will heal you up and refill you. You also refill when you find waypoints for the first time or you run into checkpoints out in the field. Now, a question that gets asked a lot is, what do I want to do? What do I do if I want to change my build? And the answer is you can respec your passive skill tree as soon as you unlock the hooded one in Act 1. So you just go to this guy, talk to him, and hit refund passives, and you can actually refund passives if you want. Like, take these out, remove them, get rid of them if you like, and you can apply that. And it's just going to cost you gold, which is a resource that you farm by playing the game, selling items, things like that. So you'll be able to do that. And keep in mind that on these nodes here that have different stats on them, you can refund these in place by changing the stat that it provides, which I think is pretty cool. So you'll be able to swap those to different stats if you like, to get you different stats if you're trying to meet minimum requirements. Which reminds me, I did forget one node type on the passive skill tree, and that is going to be the jewel node type. So you will find jewels, a category jewel, while you're running around killing stuff and looting stuff. There are different kinds of jewels. There's even unique jewels that do super cool things. And these are items that go specifically into your passive skill tree, which is kind of unique. So you actually will find jewel sockets on your passive skill tree. You'll find them in very key, like, cornerstone points around the skill tree. And then once you unlock them, so like this is unlocked right now, I can now take from my inventory a jewel and I can put it in the slot and it'll grant me any of the benefits the jewel has. So it's a way for you to gain really unique stats from jewels. And in many cases, jewels will be one of your most valuable slots on the passive skill tree. There's even special jewels that have a modifying radius that will affect nodes around it if you want to play around with that. So like they might increase the value you get from stats on your passive skill tree that are near that jewel, but this is the other kind of type you'll get on your passive skill tree. And yes, you can add and remove these as much as you want. On PC, it's left click to add and right click to remove. So you can right click it and bring it over. Apologies, I don't know what it is on console. If anyone knows, you can comment down below, but you can add and remove and you can get better jewels that have different stats and things like that, or even upgrade jewels if you like. Now, the last thing we can touch on before we leave the stats, gears, and customization category is going to be Ascendancies. So you'll notice that when you first make a character, this center part of your passive skill tree will be blank. It'll just have a look on your class. There are Ascendancies, which can be thought of as subclasses for your class. They are exclusive to that class, and it's one of the few things that are locked per class when you make one. So only a warrior can be a warbringer. Only a witch can be an infernalist. Only a ranger can be a pathfinder, that sort of thing. And when you unlock these throughout the game, you will find you unlock a very specific skill tree that has very powerful nodes and brand new abilities that are only afforded to that class and ascendancy that you will unlock through this. You will get 8 points in total to spend on your ascendancy tree, and the only way to unlock ascendancy and get stats is by completing your ascendancy trials. Now, I put on screen the estimated level for the ascendancies themselves. There are 4 ascendancy trials that you will get throughout your progression journey. This is a big question from a lot of new players that jump into the game. How do I get ascendancy points? What do I do for my 3rd and 4th ascendancy? And a lot of it is very much dependent on what you want to do with your build. So in general, this is how the ascendancy progress goes. For the first ascendancy, you will unlock it in Act 2 of the campaign by completing the Trader's Passage area, and you will get a special coin that you can use to complete the Trial of Sekhmet, which will give you your ascendancy unlock and your first 2 ascendancy points that you can spend on your ascendancy tree. Then in Act 3 of the campaign, around level 38 is where it starts becoming available. You will gain access to the Trial of Chaos. You will need an ultimatum item to enter into this. This will be be around level 38, though some of these tend to be pretty hard. These are the starting levels for these, and you will have to kind of figure out whether your build is strong or not, strong enough or not to take on the trials. So that's up to you. A lot of people do their like first ascendancy by like level 30 and their second ascendancy by level 45 and so on and so forth, just so they're a little over geared for it, so it's easier to complete. But this drops in Act 3. Once you clear the Chimera boss, you'll be able to unlock this and gain access to your second ascendancy. From there, it is very amorphous and not well explained in game, so you might get kind of confused. You can choose whether you want to do the Trial of Sekhmet again for third and fourth ascendancy, and you can choose whether you want to do the Trial of Chaos again for third and fourth. So you could do Sekhmet in Act 2 around level 22, then Trial of Chaos in Act 3 around level 38, then you can do Sekhmet again, and then Sekhmet again to get your last 4 points, or you can do Chaos again and Chaos again, or you can do a mixture. The third ascendancy for Sekhmet and Chaos they go up in difficulty, which means that if you do like Chaos 3 is not the same as Chaos 4, it will be harder to clear. These are the special items you'll get for each of these. So the Barya, the Jin Barya, gains you access to the Trial of Sekhmet, and the Inscribed Ultimatum gains you access to the Trial of Chaos. You will see on the item whether or not it will give you Transcendancy or Ascendancy points. So if you see it's grayed out, it will not grant, and if it is lit up, it will grant points. So for one, you just need the green item. Like you'll get a green item for your first one, which is a quest item that you want to complete to get your first ascendancy. Then you will get one that just needs to be level 38 or higher, which is really any ultimatum that you get from Act 3. However, in order for you to get points for Ascendancy 3 and Ascendancy 4, there are some very hidden requirements for that. First, for your third ascendancy, you need to do either a Sekhmet that has at least 3 trials in it. This will usually range between area level on the item, between level 60 and 70 when it starts popping up. On average, you'll find ones that have 3 trials that are like 64, 65, 66, all the way up to 70. These are random when they drop. Some people don't get them for a couple levels. Some people take a long time to get them to drop. You can buy these on trade if you'd like to get the third ascendancy done, that sort of thing. If you want to do your fourth ascendancy for the Trial of Sekhmet, you will need one that has 4 trials on it, which means there are 4 floors available. This usually starts dropping at around area level 72 to 74, but as long as it has number of trials 4 on it, you will get to the 4th floor. And again, this jumps up a lot in difficulty as you're doing the Trial of Sekhmet. It will keep getting harder and harder. For the other side of the coin, say you wanted to do Trial of Chaos for your third or fourth ascendancy, the level requirements are about the same. However, for Trial of Chaos, you will need, for your third ascendancy, you will need to do an Inscribed Ultimatum that will grant, that has like 10 total trials on it. So you just need one that has 10. These actually start dropping at a reasonable level if you wanted to, but as long as you do 1 Trial of Chaos, I believe, you can do it if it has 10 number of trials on it to get you that next point. However, in order to get the 4th point, the 4th ascendancy from Trial of Chaos, a lot of people don't know this, you can actually do the special unique boss from Trial of Chaos to get those points. So if you do 1 10 trial for the ultimatum or for the Trial of Chaos, you will get your 3rd ascendancy. However, in order to get to the 4th, you need to clear 3 ultimatums that have at least 10 trials in them. You will get 3 parts of a key that allow you to challenge the Trial Master, which is the ultimate boss of the Trial of Chaos. Defeating him will get you your 4th ascendancy. So depending on your build and your preference, you may want to run, 3 Sekhmet and 1 Trial of Chaos. Maybe you want to run 3 Chaos and 1 Sekhmet, or a mixture of them. You have the choice to do that for the 3rd or 4th ascendancy. Next, let's go to stashes. This is a big thing for new players and something you need to understand. So as you can see here, there are different kinds of stashes. You will be able to access these. You will see usually stash and guild stash in every town that you go to, and this is your permanent storage for your characters. It is shared between all your characters that have the same league, so if they are a different league type, they won't be able to share loot through the stash system. So if you have like a standard character and a hardcore character, or if a new league launches and you have old characters on standard and there's a new league, you won't be able to trade between them as well. But this is your storage, and unlike many other ARPGs, there is a ridiculous amount of available storage you can add for a premium fee. So normally you will just get these 4 stash tabs in game. You'll be able to put whatever items you want into them. use them however you like. You can't rename these or mess with these, but these are the default ones. However, there are microtransactions that you can open. You can go to your store here, open it up, go to shop, and then go to stash tabs. There's a whole bunch of different tabs. I've done a full video on this that I can link to down below if you're interested. And keep in mind that they require you to get the premium coins to buy. There's not really many limits on this. You can have crazy amounts of stash, and usually the longer you've been playing, the more tabs you end up collecting over time. These get saved, and they for different types that do different things that allow you to be more and more organized. However, what I would say is don't buy these outright if you're a brand new player, as they usually go on sale once a month. So every 4 weeks or so, all of the stash tabs, they'll have a stash tab sale where they're like 25% off, and they have bundles and stuff like that. So just wait for the next stash tab sale once a month to get the stash tabs that you need. I mentioned this in my video, but I recommend just getting at least a gem stash tab and a currency stash tab, and you want to have at least one premium stash tab that you will use for trading, which I guess is a perfect segue to talk about trade in the game in general. So if you are, remember we talked about the league styles, there's standard, which allows you to trade, or there's like regular, like non-solo self-bound, which allows you to trade, and then there's solo self-bound, which disables trade. The way you trade in this game is a little archaic, and you'll probably see some feedback on that online, but you need to have a premium stash tab in order to put things up on the market. So if you go to your options here to the shop, and you can go to these tabs, you'll notice there are premium stash tabs and regular stash tabs. As long as you have a premium tab, you can put items in it, and then you can actually set a price on it and hit OK, which will automatically put it up on the online auction, the online bazaar, the trade website, the marketplace, and people will message you and be able to get them from you and give you the price that you have. So this is a built-in system. You just put items in a premium tab, and you can set a tab. You can even set a price for the entire tab all at once by right-clicking on a PC, set a price, set it, hit OK, and this will allow it to be used as a tab for sales. For this, you need to make sure you have the public tag set here. So on the top left, you'll see public. If I turn this off, it's no longer a storefront. But basically, any premium tab can be used as a storefront for selling items. You just set a price on them, either on the tab or the item, and it shows up on the trade website. Now, once things are automatically up on the website, you will just need to go to pathofexile.com/trade2. I know if you're console, you might need to open up a browser or a tablet or a laptop or a computer or whatever, your phone, and bring this up, and you can bring up the trade website. I have a full video going over how to use this and everything, so I'm not going to go through that this video, but this is how you find items to search for. On the website itself, all you have to do is hit direct whisper, and this will automatically message the person in game that you want to buy the item they have listed, and this is how people will find your items as well and buy them from you if that's what you're looking for. There are a lot of different ways to search for this. If you're brand new, the simplest searches that I would look for is on weapons, use damage per second, so find the highest damage per second value that you can. For like gear, like armor pieces, do energy shield or armor or evasion as a minimum to search for that. And you can find all kinds of stats for all kinds of things in here to find exactly the item you're looking for. But this is how trade is done in the game. Next, let's do a section on resources, because there are a ton of them online. All of them have different usages. People have different preferences for them. So let's just go through what you might be hearing about or what might be making sense for you for the game of Path of Exile 2. If you're on PC, you have the option of utilizing overlays. So this is going to be a way for you to like do price searches on things to see how much people are charging for stuff. There are several of these, and I do have a video going over these individually. There's Path of Exile or PoE Overlay 2 from Overwolf. You can use like the sidekick option if you'd like. There's Exile Exchange 2, and there's overlays, and basically what they allow you to do is to hotkey certain things, price check certain things, or make trade a little bit easier for you as you're using those. So again, I'll link a video going over all of those specifically, but if you're on PC, you have an option to use the overlays there. Now that it's out, there is a third-party application for PC, again on PC, that you can use to test out builds and import builds. This has kind of been a mainstay for a lot of people in Path of Exile 1 and has just released within the last couple days for Path of Exile 2, and that is called Path of Building. This is a standalone executable that you will run on your desktop on PC that you can use to share builds, import builds, and use builds. You will probably even have people say, hey, send me the Path of Building link, or here is the Path of Building link. Whenever you hear that, that just means it is a standalone build calculator tool that you can download and install. I have a video going over this one as well, so you can use this as a reference that will allow you to modify your build, save save your build and share your build through different processes on that as well. So if you ever hear Path of Building, that's what you know this is. You can either get a link online or they'll generate a code using this that you can import into Path of Building, and eventually, hopefully, they will allow us to import this directly into game to be able to set up your character. The other system that's mega crucial is the loot filter system. So when you have items that you can use, so let's like push some random stuff on the ground here just to kind of show the difference of items as well. So if we go over here and we just drop a bunch of stuff, we can just drop things. Oh, I was in my hideout where nothing can be on the ground. So you can drop these, put them on the ground. You'll notice that they have a certain appearance on the ground when they're there. You can actually control all of these just like it was a web browser. So change the color, the size, the glow, the sound it plays when it lays on the ground. All of those are customizable and are modified through the use of a loot filter, which is in the game itself, and it will be different. How you implement it will be different based on whether you're on PC or on console. In the game itself, if you go to options here, you'll notice in the very top, if you go to game, there is a loot filter or item filter option, which if you change this, you'll notice that the viewing, like these things end up looking different and or even end up just disappearing entirely depending on what filter you're using and how you want to present that. So all of those just look different. You can change the stats, you can change the sounds, you can change the presentation, all of that. So the way this works on PC to do that first is you will have a file folder on your PC that you can actually link to directly through Explorer if you're on Windows. So you can click this button, it will open up your Windows preview, which will bring you over to this as well. This will go to your PC, Documents, My Games, Path of Exile 2, and all you have to do is use these .filter files that you'll find online to enter the filters in here, and then they will automatically show up in the list here based on the name of the .filter. There are websites, I have videos on this as well, going over loot filters. Filterblade.xyz is one of them. I'll link to the video down below if you're looking for a more detailed explanation on that. So that's how you use filters on PC. However, they just recently added an option to use filters on console as well, and that is done through the website specifically. So if you're on console, you need to go to pathofexile.com and go to your accounts. You have to actually log into your actual account and log in. If you go to overview, there's going to be a button down at the bottom that says item filters, and all you have to do is go to that and click create new item filter and add an item filter to your account. You can only have one active at a time, but whatever item filter you have activated on your account for your Path of Exile account, when you go to console, it'll use that item filter for you, and there's usually, most people only use one at a time anyways, so it's very simple and easy for that. There are a whole bunch of item filters. You can go, item filter ladder here. You can find item filters online. There's tons of ways to do this, but if you're on console, you will need to log into a web browser, go to your account and set your item filter online, and then log into that account through Path of Exile on your console to get that filter to work. Let's quickly touch on guilds. They are basically clans or guilds that you can share between characters. You can go to this list and go to guilds on here just to gain access to your guilds and join them. This will allow you to be online with other players. If you're in a guild and you're in a trade league, you can, or a non-solo self-found league, you can join parties with people, share with people. You can have items in here, and then also guilds also have their own guild stash, which is separate. So if you want to share items with other people, you can, and with your guild mates on top of that. And you can even just watch to see like how your guild mates are progressing during a season, to see at what level they are and where they're going and things like that. So all of that I think is a really cool way to join through that. You can join guilds by like being invited directly. You can create a guild, or you can even join public parties using the guild interface to see where people are doing things in your area, to find people to play with if that's what you're looking for. Now let's dive into Endgame. I'm not going to be super detailed on this. The video is long, but I've just accepted that at this point. I want to at least be able to cover all the topics. So let's talk about Endgame and your process there. So your main goal is going to be completing the campaign and unlocking Endgame. In the current state of early access, you will have to complete acts 1 through 3 and then complete them again on cruel difficulty in order to unlock Endgame. Long-term wise, you will need to be you complete 6 acts, which are their own campaign option, and do that way. Then you will need to start your endgame process, but the thing you need to know about endgame is going to start with the idea of a hideout. A hideout is a personal base, a player housing sort of effect that you can go to. It is your own, you can customize it, you can decorate it, and you can make it your home base for all of your endgame activities. There's also a normal hideout for you, like a player, each player gets their own hideout, and there's a guild hideout that the guild master can set up as well. So you'll notice that if you go to waypoints over on the right side of the screen, you'll notice there is a guild hideout if you're in a guild. There's also a regular hideout for you if you have a hideout. Before you finish the campaign and go to your end game, you likely won't have any hideouts unless you bought one from the store. You don't get any hideouts. You have to do the first end game activity to get your first free hideout. There are 4 free hideouts in the game you can earn just by exploring the end-game atlas, and then if you buy one, you'll get one earlier, but you'll have to interact with the atlas at first in order to gain access to your hideout. So I just switched characters here. You'll notice that on this character we have endgame. You'll have the 6 acts that you'll have to do for the campaign, and then you'll have an endgame option which will bring up the atlas. This is going to be your endgame activity. It is an infinitely sprawling map that grows in all directions, and these little nodes are little maps or challenge dungeons that you'll have to complete that give you loot and have various different aspects. I have a full video going over Atlas and all of its modifiers and everything that I can link down below as well if you want to utilize that, but this is going to be your end game activity. However, on the Atlas, there are very specific nodes that you'll notice have the same icon that we saw before. So if we go to Waypoint, over here on the right side, this icon on the side of the screen, that is the hideout icon, that little fleur-de-lis, which is like the spear tip from like old school like military. It's that old school tip you'll see there. That is the hideout icon. So all you have to do is go to the Atlas and look for a node that has that icon on it. So you just got to explore, look around the map, see what nodes you're looking for. Different hideouts will have different locations based on where they are. And once you finally find one, like let's say this one right here, you'll notice that it has that little spear tip. This is a hideout. So you have to go to this for the first time. There's usually one at the very beginning. So like right when you start out at the very beginning of your Atlas, there's usually one like right away. I think mine was like, yeah, Feld Hideout was like right here, just a couple nodes away. But once you find that icon, all you have to do is make your way to that node, complete a map of any level on that, and you'll unlock the hideout. Once you have a hideout, you have to go to Alva, either in Act 3 or in the end game zone or in your hideout, and you can click select hideout, and this is where you'll be able to swap to the hideouts that you have based on the ones either that you purchased through microtransactions or that you unlock through that, and you just swap to it, activate it, you got yourself a hideout, and now you can travel to it. It's your home base that you can use for whatever. Now don't worry, you don't need a hideout to be able to use the Atlas. You can actually, once you finish the campaign, you'll be able to go to the waypoint in Act 3 to the Ziggurat Refuge Past. This will take you to the end game town, which does have a map device in it. This is how you utilize the Atlas. So you will be able to use this in order to gain your first hideout. Then you can convert it over to your hideout and do everything from there if you'd like, but you will have to activate that first in order to gain access to the Atlas for the first time, get your hideout, and get going. Now, you'll probably hear the term mapping or maps in Path of Exile 2. This refers to something in Path of Exile 1 for the most part, but these are going to be the items that you use called waystones. Waystones are the things that you add into the Atlas to traverse it. You can buy them initially from this vendor, Doriani, which is right next to the Atlas, the map device initially. And there's going to be your waystones, and then you will take these waystones and you will put them in. So we can grab like a waystone here as an item. We pick it up, we go to the map device, and then we go to a node that is blue, which means we have access to it. Green means completed, red means failed, and then blue means accessible, and then the white means we haven't reached it yet. So you can click on a blue one, take a map, put it in here, click traverse. When you do this, it'll open 6 portals that you can use to enter, and you'll get 1 entry per portal. When the portals are gone, you're done. As it stands right now, you can only die once in a map before it's lost forever, so keep that in mind. But that is how you're going to be traversing the map. So you see how yellow means it's active. If I complete this map properly, I can move on to the next node, then the next node, and I can just keep traversing this over and over. These towers will reveal things for you, like in Genshin or Breath of the Wild, and you'll be able to reveal the map that way. For the sake of completeness, let's talk about crafting real quick, kind of like a process you will learn over time, but there are a large number of ways that you can modify items in Path of Exile 2. You can remove stats from them, you can add stats to them, you can change their quality, you can change them into completely different items entirely, and this extends not only just to gear in general, but also to like maps that we just talked about. So for example, we could take like a map that we might have that has no modifiers on it, and we can craft this map into a higher quality one, which will give us more loot. So understanding the crafting system, even if you're going to be on Trade League, is important for being able to understand the game itself. So if we grab like an item like this, maybe even like an item that has like less modifiers on it, you can see this item here and you'll notice all of these currency items. This is a currency tab you get in your stash tab if you want to buy one, but you have all of these currency items or crafting items that do different things. So if we have a white item, if we use Orb of Transmutation on it turns it into a magic item. Normal is white, magic is blue, rare is yellow, and then unique is like an orange brown, like a poopy rusty color for that as well. So you'll be able to change things based on what those are, especially for endgame when it comes to like precursor tablets and waystones. You'll be crafting these. So we can take like a basic waystone here and we can grab like an Orb of Transmutation. So this is a white item. We just turn it into a blue item with a random modifier. Orb of Augmentation gives it a new random modifier because this can have 2 on it. If we wanted to, we can turn a white into a yellow. We can turn a blue into a yellow. We can remove a stat. We can add a stat. We can corrupt items. So all of this is part of the crafting process, and you can use things on sockets. There's a ton of stuff here that you can really dive deep into and customize your gear to either sell it or to make it better. And this is the process you will be going through on Solo Self-Found to make your character stronger if you're trying to understand that whole process as well. And I think I'll cut the video there. It's already way too long. I overestimated or underestimated how much I would need to talk about here to make this a complete video. But just keep in mind that for future, there are more classes coming, more weapons coming. And as we explained, you can combine these together in different ways. So even if a class comes out or a weapon comes out that is not to your liking, you might be able to make some cool stuff out of it by combining the classes together through the skill tree and through the weapons themselves. They also, of course, are going to be adding in 3 new acts. So the Act 1, 2, and 3 repeat are not meant to be the final version of the game. They will have an Act 4, 5, and 6 before the end game starts. So they're going to be adding new classes, new items, new skill gems, new modifiers, new things to the game, new areas, maps, bosses, all of that. They want to basically double the size of the game that it is right now in almost every aspect. They want to double the amount of bosses from 50 to 100. They want to double the amount of unique mobs from 200 to 400. They want to double the classes from 6 to 12. There'll also be more ascendancies to choose from for each of the classes, more weapons and combinations, that sort of thing. But hopefully this video is a very complete guide of all the aspects of Path of Exile 2, gives you a starting point on how you can get into the game, and some references and links you might need to go to the relevant areas to learn more. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.